So Rode recently released a firmware update. The most exciting feature that I think is that they turned this thing into a MIDI controller, which means that with these faders or these pads, you can control other programs to do other functions. Super exciting. Now, it's not a dedicated MIDI controller, but we'll talk about that. Keep watching. Probably the first major update is the effects units themselves that they had built in. I don't know if you remember with the original Rodecaster and the first update, you had switches. So you switched on a compressor, you switched on a noise gate, you switched on a de-esser, and it did all the work for you. But for the guys that know exactly what they're doing in there, they've given you effects edit mode, which allows you to get into the nitty-gritty and the parameters of all the effects that you're looking at. So have a look at this. You go in here, into your little cog. We're going into the settings. Advanced, audio, processing, effects edit mode. You can switch it on or you can switch it off. There's a couple of things I want to show you in there. But first, if you look above, you got the TRRS output, -6 dB. What is that? It's if you plug a phone into the TRRS input in the Rodecaster. The signals coming from some phones were really loud and they were distorting and you couldn't get a clean signal. You're now switching this on. It brings everything down by 6 dB. You have a much cleaner signal coming from the phone. So it's just cleaning things up. Here's another little feature from the update. You flick from the bottom of the screen and you're back at the home screen. Do you remember going back, forward, forward? That's all gone. You flick from the bottom. I love it. So go back into the cog. I go to channels, and now this window has changed. You can see a master compressor. I'll show that to you in 1 second. I'm going into channel 1, audio processing, and now you can see all the effects. The screen has changed from those little switch on, switch off buttons. You can go into your high pass filter, go into your noise gate, and now you're seeing all the parameters. So if you know what you're doing in there and you can set those accordingly, you have full access to all the parameters of all of these effects, including the compressor. Now you can see the level coming in. See, the first one is the signal going in. Second, yellow is the signal coming out. And the red is the amount of reduction going on in there. So you have full control over all the parameters of your effects. But let's go back out to look at this master compressor. The master compressor is the compression that is going through the master bus. On that, I can put compression to control the whole show. Again, you got your green input, your yellow output, and red is the reduction. I'm going into settings again, advanced audio processing, and I'm turning off effects edit mode. I'm going in again, channels, and look, the master compressor controls are gone. I go into channel 1, audio processing, and we're back to those big old switches again and leaving all the work up to the Rodecaster Pro. Another new feature for the professionals out there, or the guys that know what they're doing, that master output, your stereo output, where we put the compressor on, you get meters, and you can see on these meters that they're just meters. You now have broadcast meters, which means that you're looking at the actual decibel range that you're dealing with. Into, again, the cog, advanced audio operations, and you see broadcast meters. You switch that on, you go back to your home screen, and you can see that you've got the full scale there that you're working to. There is one really funky little new function for the firmware update, which is kind of wild. I get giddy about these things. So we go into sounds, we go into sound there. So that's that pad that we're accessing. You get the full controls, you know, you got trash talk, and you can put in a beep for anyone effing and blinding as well. So within here, we want to go and record. So you can record a sound to that pad, but with the new firmware update, you see this button, overdub. So I can record my voice. We hit overdub, you're adding to it. It's an overdub, and that's all being recorded to that pad. In the original update, you could record multi-channel, which means you're recording each and every one of these tracks to a DAW to work on with post. But with the super functions you get in here for your compression, your de-essing, your gating, it wouldn't record any of those functions. But with the new update, you can post-fader record your multi-channel, which means that if you've set up amazing settings for compression and de-essing and gating on your mics and your inputs, it records those settings. So you don't have to post all those settings again. So I think as regards this firmware update and what people are thinking of, I think the majority of people will be excited about the MIDI controller aspect of it. Now, I looked at the MIDI coming out of this with a MIDI monitor, and it isn't a specific protocol. It's kind of spitting out MIDI, and there was a couple of little funny ones in there, but it's not a dedicated MIDI controller. It was never designed to be so, but they're adding this functionality anyway, so it gives you a little bit more in there, but how well it works for you, listen, that's your bag. It's in there. We'll look at it further in other shows, but I really want to show you how to set that up. Works with two DAWs, Logic and Reaper. Let me show you how to set it up. Go into your cog again, into Advanced Audio Operations. Go to MIDI Control. I'm setting up MIDI control, turn it on or turn it off. In Reaper, before you do anything, you go to your preferences, you go to your devices, your audio devices, Rodecaster Pro multi-channel, which means that you're recording each of these tracks individually. So let's set up the MIDI input. Enable your Rodecaster Pro. And if you can see here, it's enable input for control messages. The next thing you do is your output. Then I set up 8 tracks. When you set up your 8 tracks, you put it into record and you get the option of what signal you want to bring in there. So I'm going mono for the first 4 tracks. And I'm going mic 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's mic 1, there's mic 2, mic 3, and mic 4. The next 4 tracks have to be stereo. So they are stereo, USB left and right. The next one is TRS left and right. The next one is Bluetooth left and right. And finally, we have sounds left and right, which are your pads. I can go back to the start of the session, hit record, and I'm recording the output of everything on the Rodecaster. But we want to set up the MIDI configuration of this machine. Next thing I do, I go to Actions, or Actions as most people pronounce it. You type in the filter, track, set volume. And with that you see these, track set volume for track 1. And you go to add. You play with the fader, and it's recorded that movement. You go down to the next one, you click add, you play with the second fader, and so on and so forth through the whole machine. And now everything's set up there. And if you look at channel 1 and 2, hey, we got control over those things. So if I record my whole show from start to end into Reaper, I can use this to mix my levels because we've set up the MIDI control via USB to Reaper. The features of the new firmware update from Rode for the Rodecaster Pro. Some really, really handy and some funky and some really exciting things about the MIDI. Wow, brilliant. I love the machine to play with. And I think these firmware updates go a long way to bring it up a very big step. A lot of people are going to get a lot of use out of those firmware updates. I love it.